Well, Madam Speaker, the government isn't acting multilaterally. Last month, the FBI placed Russian oligarch Yevgeny Prigozhin on its most wanted list for interfering in the 2016 U.S. election. Twitter released evidence that Prigozhin's Internet Research Agency has targeted Canada with thousands of disinformation tweets. Oligarchs target Canada with disinformation, target members of this government, and undermine our democracy, yet the government fails to sanction them. Why is this government not working multilaterally and joining our allies in applying Magnitsky sanctions on oligarchs like Prigozhin?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And as I said, we have already targeted 2 individuals with sanctions that the EU had on their list. We'll continue to keep every option on the table, as we will continue to work multilaterally, as we will continue to express our strong concern that Russian authorities immediately release Mr. Navalny, immediately allow those who are being detained to exercise their rights of freedom of speech and assembly. We'll continue to do this, and we will do it multilaterally in constant conversation.
Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Madam Speaker, last month, Parliament recognized a genocide against Muslims is taking place in China. This week, a coalition of experts, including 2 former Liberal ministers of justice and a former Liberal minister of foreign affairs, concluded that a genocide is taking place. This week, the United States called out China at the United Nations for this genocide. Yesterday, Romeo Dallaire, who witnessed the Rwandan genocide, said a genocide is taking place and the government must act. When will this government recognize that a genocide is taking place in China?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank the member for his question. I think he knows that I take this issue very seriously, as does our government. We're aware of the independent reports. We're aware of comments made by others, and we will continue to address the situation that has been addressed by this Parliament. We take these issues seriously. As we have repeatedly said, we'll remain deeply disturbed by troubling reports of human rights violations in Xinjiang, and we take allegations of genocide very seriously. And we'll work in collaboration with allies and others to make sure that we have those opinions expressed clearly and strongly to China.
China Report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Enbridge's Line 5 is critical national infrastructure, but like the entire Canadian resource sector, it faces phasing out because of the Liberals' energy policy. The minister said, quote, "We are fighting for Line 5, end quote. But Canadians are asking if the Liberals actually back this pipeline, or is it simply another hollow and hypocritical promise like their failed silence on Keystone XL? Or maybe they only care about fighting when it affects regions of the country where they actually get a few votes."
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, Line 5 is non-negotiable. People will not be left out in the cold. There are hundreds of thousands of homes on both sides of the border that depend on it for heating. Tens of thousands of jobs on both sides of the border depend on it. We take threats to Canadian energy security very seriously. We are standing up for energy workers. Crude oil exports, by the way, are at pre-pandemic volumes, 4 straight months of GDP growth with 6.1% growth in the last quarter. That's the largest of any sector in our economy by far. We are proud of our energy workers. They are leading the way. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Protect that.
Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Madam Speaker, with all due respect, the answer to that question is absolute garbage. Get off the talking points. Canadians can, returning, drive across the border and avoid this quarantine hotel. It is politics above science. We actually have something that will work. Rapid testing for pre-departure and arrivals. When will the government admit this is politics over science and cancel this horrendous hotel quarantine program?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, just for a moment, let me clarify that it's that party on that side of the House that has always put politics over science. From day one, our response to COVID-19 has been guided by science and evidence. We're working closely with provinces and territories to ensure that they have the tools to respond to COVID-19, and that includes millions of items of PPE, rapid tests, millions and millions and millions of rapid tests, Madam Speaker, and on-the-ground support through the Canadian Red Cross. Gives me a moment, Madam Speaker, to thank our amazing healthcare workers, caregivers, and essential workers for their tireless efforts in these challenges.
Honourable Member for Victoria.
Madam Speaker, Canada has missed every single climate target. We are the only G7 country whose emissions have actually increased instead of decreased since the Paris Agreement. The world's top climate scientists are telling us that the next 10 years are the most important. We need climate action, a just transition for workers, and climate accountability now, not a decade from now. The Liberals promised milestone targets every 5 years, but then left 2025 out of their climate bill. Are they that scared of accountability, or do they not agree that the next 10 years are the most critical? Why won't the Prime Minister commit to a 2025 target?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. This Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act has robust accountability and transparency. Just to name a few aspects, a legally binding process for the federal government to set climate targets and bring forward plans to meet those targets, rigorous ongoing progress reports, yearly reports by the independent advisory body, ongoing audits by the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development, just to name a few. The Minister's been very clear in his willingness to consider amendments, but those amendments can only begin to be considered by the committee. I hope that the member and her party and other climate supporting MPs in this House join us in moving this bill to committee as soon as possible.
Member for Elmwood Transcona.
Madam Speaker, on Wednesday, more than 30 organizations called on the Prime Minister to support a temporary waiver of certain intellectual property rights at the World Trade Organization. The TRIPS provisions treat vaccine technology and knowledge as the private property of pharmaceutical companies, but the research was paid for with over $100 billion of public funds from across the world, including Canada. The purpose of the vaccine isn't to pad the pockets of multinational corporations. It's to protect public health and get the economy back on track. So when will the Liberals stop putting profit before people and sign on to this important initiative?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, allow me to thank my honourable colleague for his question. It is important for our government that there is a just global recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. Canada is a strong proponent of multilateral, rules-based system within the WTO context. We're committed to ensuring strong, resilient global medical supply chains and have reached out to the waiver proponents to better understand their concerns.